So, you're holding the second mimer in Kuntreis Umayan. Thus far, we have discussed the idea of shtus and the idea of that it is a shtus to do an avera. We've discussed why that is, and we've discussed a little bit about what's wrong with averas. Just to give the recap from the last ice. In the last ice, we said that a person, according to the mila of what he is and his purpose in Avodas Hashem, is his purpose is to serve Hashem with Ava and Yira. And when a person is drawn after physical pleasures and he lowers the soul to connect itself with that which is lower than it, he becomes worse than animals that don't have any understanding, because he has understanding and he's lowering himself. And the desire that he has takes things which could be permitted and it could lower them into being bad for that time. And all this comes because of the Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer Hara tries to render him to being a fool. So now we are going to, in this case, we're going to discuss a little bit about the Nefesh Bahamas. We're going to discuss a little bit about what the Yetzer Hara says to a person, and then we're going to bring in a line which is going to become a very fundamental line all the way at the end.
Just quickly, because I was reflecting on this yesterday. When it comes to how we can bodily pleasures that we overindulge in, and that's bad. Can it even be for holy things?
Yes.
Yeah, so even like, I notice a lot of people, for example, when they go to mikveh, because it's quite warm and they sit and they relax, it's like they're sitting in a jacuzzi.
It's actually very funny, because I believe that's actually an example given by Rishonim of something that you needed to separate the pleasure from the desire, and it's not in like a concept of like like Shara B'Tachin or anything like that. It's in the context of halacha, because if a person takes an oath to abstain from a certain pleasure, then we say mitzvah lav lehanas nitnu. So if a person takes an oath to abstain from eating matzah, it doesn't make a difference, because it depends on how they word it. There are ways to make it a general prohibition, and that would make that they aren't able to eat the matzah. But in general, we say mitzvah lav lehanas nitnu, that mitzvahs aren't given for pleasure, and a person can deny himself pleasure, but he can't deny himself a mitzvah. However, what happens if it's a mikvah, and maybe I think the example might have been the other way, that it was a cold mikvah in the summertime, and you want you want to cool down, but it could go either way. I honestly forget which one it is, and I've been meaning to find. I remember it was a Ran, and for some reason I'm thinking it was in Nidarim. It makes sense that it would be in Nidarim, but I need to find it. I don't think there is Ran in Nidarim, which is why it doesn't make sense. I think it's only in Mukha Yosef, but it's beside the point. The point is that there is a distinction to be made, and it's not indulgence in a mitzvah. It's indulgence in something that happens to come with a mitzvah. The mitzvah could be geshmak. Sometimes, it's a mitzvah to indulge on Shabbos. Einik Shabbos is in and of itself a mitzvah. That over there, that is the mitzvah, and over there, the mitzvah is to indulge. But in other mitzvahs, the mitzvah is to do the thing and not necessarily to indulge. And indulging in that, a permissible thing, that would fall into the category. But, and this is a good way to segue in, all of these things are things which are mutter. By the way, there is a massive halachic discourse about if you're allowed to go into a hot mikvah on Shabbos. That's beside the point. Some people say it's not allowed. Sometimes the Yetzer Hara convinces a person to do things which are not just that they're permitted technically, but if you indulge in them in a way that's not proper, then you could be dragging it down to bad. But no, things which are l'chila aser. And he shows him the good and the pleasure that's in it. And the Yetzer Hara can stir up his desire until until his soul isn't able to stand up to the challenge, and he's able to stumble in this chas v'shalom. Hashem should save us. The way that the Yetzer Hara does this, how does the Yetzer Hara accomplish this? So the Chachamim said that the way that the Yetzer Hara works is like this. First he says, do this. And then the next day he says, do this. And he keeps on upping the ante until ultimately he says, go serve Avodah Zarah, and the person is listening to him. First the Yetzer Hara starts off by trying to get him to do things which are mutter. It's easier to get the person to do these things because they're not asur per se. They're the things that are mutter. but the person becomes a grubber when he does these things. He becomes more coarse and unrefined by just indulging in his desires. That the desires of the nefesh bahamis start to get more, so they start to increase, they start to get greater, to start desiring everything. So the ratzin, the desire, becomes to be very great in everything that the person could desire. And I want to point out, just to note, it's interesting that the Rebbe Rashab uses the lashon of, first he says this is the umros, this is the work of the Yetzer Hara, and he says the way that the Yetzer Hara brings a person to this, and then he says that by the Yetzer Hara convincing a person to indulge in pleasures, the Yetzer Hara gets that the nefesh bahamis should have more desires, and usually we very often conflate the Yetzer Hara and the nefesh bahamis, but over here in general they are not necessarily even distinct entities. There's definitely a significant overlap, and one of them could possibly be completely included in the other one. But the Yetzer Hara is the inclination that we have towards bad. The Nefesh Bahamis is the thing that desires animalistic things. So the Yetzer Hara, the inclination for doing bad, will incline us towards doing things which are not so bad, things which only just make our Nefesh Bahamis stronger. There's nothing necessarily bad about having a strong Nefesh Bahamis, but usually a strong Nefesh Bahamis is strong, and it can usually win the game of top of war. So it's not necessarily making it bad per se in that way. It's not things which aren't necessarily. It could even be things which are mutter, and you taka have a good reason for doing them necessarily, like possibly, as in Einik Shabbos, for example. A person could indulge in Einik Shabbos, and taka is avtaka, you don't become grub from the Einik of Einik Shabbos, but it could be that a person will enjoy themselves and it won't necessarily, and it could carry out. You have leftovers from Shabbos or whatever it is, and ultimately the Yetzer Hara could try to drag out even from something that's mutter, even something that's a mitzvah. He could try to drag in. So like what you were saying, he could try to, the ikar of the Yetzer Hara in this, that the Yetzer Hara is trying to make that the nefesh bahamis should have more muscle mass, it should have more pulling strength, so that it could ultimately end up pulling the other direction. But they're two distinct entities. The Yetzer Hara is what's trying to get you to do bad. The nefesh bahamis is the thing that's trying to get what it wants. And it's important to understand the distinction. The nefesh bahamis isn't necessarily bad, but you need to try to win over the nefesh bahamis. It says that humans only have like 1/5 of a horsepower. Horses actually have not exactly a horsepower. I think they made a mistake when they did the calculation originally. But when you harness a horse, you harness an ox to a plow or something like that, you're able to accomplish much more. When you're able to harness your nefesh bahamis, you're able to show your nefesh bahamis a little bit of getlechait, and the nefesh bahamis starts appreciating it, then Adarabah, you can chase getlechait with much more passion, with much more fervor. But it's important to recognize the nefesh bahamis isn't necessarily bad. You just need to keep it from getting grown. So you have many different levels of the nature of a nefesh bahamis. You have some people that their nefesh bahamis is not so strong. You have some things that it has a desire for, some things it doesn't want at all. And the things that it wants, it doesn't even want so strongly. It's saying it's fine if he doesn't get it. It doesn't make too much of a difference to him. Some people have a very strong nefesh bahamis. You have a person that is nefesh bahamis is extremely strong, that everything that he sees, everything that's known to him, he has a desire for. He wants everything. And this taiva is very strong, very strongly aroused in him, and he won't rest until he gets his taiva. Maybe he just won't rest if he's conquering his inclination. But some people, that's the nature of the nefesh bahamis. Sometimes you have a person whose nefesh bahamis isn't necessarily so strong, or it's not. Mitzad itself is not so strong, but the nefesh bahamis becomes stronger by a person being invested in concepts, things that relate to desires. Shenasa Lideza of a gas v'etzem, that the nefesh b'hamis becomes actually more coarse and unrefined. She'im yesh b'etzem eni b'tikut kokach, even though b'etzem the nefesh b'hamis isn't so strong. Amnam alidei riba yapa amnam shemamali tavasei, through all of the times that a person fulfills his desires, Nasa alidei zeh tikif a nefesh b'hamis b'yeser litzis b'chol davar v'seikif ma'ed. So the strength of nefesh b'hamis becomes greater, so that it can desire things with more strength. So it's important to be in control. It's important to stay away. But we're just developing. We don't need to elaborate on this too much. We know that strength of the nefesh b'hamis causes a weakness in the nefesh alikis. And as the Zohar says, if I'm not mistaken, took for the gufa chol din nishmasa. That strength of the body leads to weakness of the soul. Take if chumrius, the nefesh b'hamis, gerem chalishus nefesh alikis, that strengthening the material. I don't know.
Materialistic.
No, I'm trying the materiality like that of the nefesh b'hamis causes weakness in the nefesh alikis. It's not the it's obviously that when a person is spending time chasing kaivis and whatnot, that they don't have enough time for terror or for davening. And he becomes more distant from being able to understand godly concepts. And obviously, when a person is sunk into his taivas, he's not able to contemplate and understand godly things in his soul until it should draw his heart to cleave to God and to be included in godliness. All of this is in shaykh to a person that's mamash indulging taivas. They just don't have the time. They have a busy schedule. But if you come to a point where he doesn't have fear of Hashem in his vision, and he forgets about the Eibusher, and he forgets that certain things are opposite the will of Hashem, chas v'shalom. And because he forgets it, the fact that something is against Hashem's will doesn't stop him from doing it. Because godliness is not something that he feels enough to be able to become affected by it. Even though he's not a kafir in Torah. He knows that the Torah is true. And he knows that something is also according to Torah. But in his soul he doesn't feel the fact that it's also. He knows it, but he doesn't feel it. And he might feel it to some extent, but it's not enough that it should be able to stop him, so that he should be able to stand up to his desire. So just to reiterate, there's 2 points in what increasing the coarseness of the nefesh b'hamis causes for a person. The first point is that he's weakening his nefesh alikis to the point where he's putting all of his energy into the nefesh b'hamis, and when you're investing all of the time and effort and energy into the nefesh b'hamis, the nefesh alikis just doesn't have the wherewithal to be able to contemplate, to be able to feel its own desires of cleaving to Hashem. A person is investing everything in the desires of the nefesh b'hamis. He's not investing in the desires of the nefesh alikis, so he's not able to be close to Hashem in that way. But not only that, that's one level. The second level is that when a person is in such a level, even though he could be fully aware that something is asur, but he doesn't feel it, and the lack of feeling of this is something the Eibusher doesn't want, and I have a connection to the Eibusher, that lack of feeling causes that he's not able to stand up to his taiva, even though he knows it's wrong, which is, by the way, a very scary thing, and it's really something that, sometimes you see people that, on the news or whatever, that they've committed horrible crimes, and you wonder, how is it possible? The person for sure knows that sometimes the person looks very remorseful, sometimes the person cries, and the person for sure knows that it's very wrong to, bash in someone's head or whatever it is. and the person looks very traumatized from the experience. And how did they get to the point where they're able to do that, knowing that this is a bad idea and that there's probably nothing that will be gained from bashing it? For some people look very happy about what they've done, and like those people, I'm not talking about them. Some people they commit horrible crimes and then they feel horrible about what they've done, and you look at it and you see that they have complete remorse, and it looks like you can't even imagine how would such a person come to do something like that. And what it is a person knows that it's wrong, but they don't feel it because, and I'm not saying that maybe they invested in the Nefesh Bahamas too much or whatever it is. I don't know exactly how every single serial killer got to be who they are, but the point is that when a person becomes more coarse and more unrefined, they lose that connection more and more, in a sense, between what they know and what they're able to feel. Until a point where a person can cast shalom something else. Any questions so far?
Obviously, you have the drugs and traumas from people that go through, and
drugs are a very good highway to getting to a place where you're not connecting what you know and what you feel.
Is there any talk about whether drugs affect either of your neshamas?
Ask Rabbi Ullman. I can't say whether or not, but maybe he's got some questions about it. So. All of this is because he's entrenching himself in pleasures for things which are permitted, and through the things which are permitted, the nefesh b'hamas just gets stronger and stronger. But nefesh alikis nachlash b'yeser, and the nefesh alikis gets weaker. And therefore, when the nefesh b'hamas tempts him and shows him the good in something, and it gets to a point where the nefesh b'hamas can then tempt him with something which is asur, and he'll still be nefesh chas v'shalom, even though it's literally asur. Because the nefesh b'hamas doesn't get stronger off of yisur. The nefesh b'hamas gets stronger off of indulging. It's not about something being right or wrong. It's about just when the more you feed an animal, the stronger it gets. And that's the system that it works on. It's very easy to get caught up in it. It's motor. But this is how, and it's not really nefesh b'hamas that it's trying to get him. The Sahara that's trying to get him. The nefesh b'hamas itself also wants its desires, and that's maybe diet. That's why the nefesh b'hamas, it says the nefesh b'hamas is what's tempting him, because it's not that the Yetzer Hara, the nefesh b'hamas is a lot of good that could be pulled out of the nefesh b'hamas, but the nefesh b'hamas is nochaltz a behema, and it's important to understand that we can't let our lives be dictated by a behema. So even though it's the Yetzer Hara, the inclination towards bad that tries to use the nefesh b'hamas to try to get us to be more grubs, so that ultimately we could do isur, that's because the Yetzer Hara wants us to have isur. The nefesh b'hamas wants to have what it wants, but the nefesh b'hamas is also pulling us towards what it wants. That's what the nefesh b'hamas does. It's a behema, and the nefesh b'hamas itself, even though it's not necessarily bad, but the nefesh b'hamas is drawn towards its desires and it tries to pull us along to the desires. The nefesh b'hamas itself, and it could get to a point where if you indulge in nefesh b'hamas enough, nefesh b'hamas will get more grub until it'll start wanting yisurim, and then it'll start pulling us towards that too. And chas v'shalom, we don't want that. And with this we can understand how a person could become foolishly blind to something. Even though he could think that it's good, even though it's complete bad. And he lowers his soul to a very great extent, as we've explained. So, it's a serious thing. But in regards to the temptation in things which are asur, chas v'shalom, there's another thing, which this is something that really only Yidden could appreciate, but there's something that the Yetzer Hara says, which is that if a person does this bad thing, they will not be disconnected from Hashem. He says, so what if you do this, or it's not going to make a difference, you're still going to be connected to Hashem. And by the way, he's kind of right to a certain extent. To a certain extent he's not right, but to a certain extent he is right. He tries to get you to focus on the part where he is right. In the souls of Jews, the nature of the soul of a Jew is that a Jew is not able to be separated from godliness, because Hashem is our Father. It's just you can't break the connection between a father and a son. A Yid cannot be disconnected from Hashem. Because of this, even light Jews, even Jews that are Chabad light, there wasn't the intention, but even Jews which they take Yiddishkeit very not seriously, like the Yid in the days of Achashverosh, they went to the feast of Achashverosh, they gave their lives al Kiddush Hashem. They could have converted. It says that Haman told Achashverosh that there's one nation, they have different laws than everyone else, and that was his whole sales pitch for why to exterminate the Jews. If the Jews would have converted, even though it wasn't an attack against the souls, Haman just wanted to kill all the Jews. But if a Jew would have converted, he would have gotten away with it. He would have survived. He wouldn't have been considered a Jew as far as this decree was concerned. And yeah, the Jews went on Mesiras Nefesh because they said they can't give up Yiddishkeit. To be fried, to eat treif, to use shatnez or whatever, it's fine. That's one thing. But you can't fry out. You can't say that you're dropping the Yiddishkeit. There are a lot of people who are fry. I honestly wonder if there's another phenomena like this in the world. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I honestly don't know. But yet, fry Yidden still feel such a connection to Yiddishkeit. Either they hate it, or they love it, or they're indifferent. But fry Yidden, by and large, don't just like lose the connection to Yiddishkeit. They always have some kind of thinking about it, or they want to discuss it. I know this from Hashem, I know this from whatever. And to be fair, I'm going on and saying, "Are you a Jew?" But it seems like fry people have much more to do with it than, I don't know, other things. I'm trying to think of an example.
My family that's secular is the perfect example on my father's side. They, no matter what it is, any type of avodah zarah, completely, anything else, they'll go to shul for Yom Kippur for 20 minutes. That's what they do. But when it comes to anything that has to do with, if someone says come to a funeral at a church, for example, even if it's very close, no, I can't go. I don't step foot in there. Even sometimes with the Reform Temple, no, I don't step foot in there. I don't.
Yeah. So it doesn't. Everyone has their thing that they know. This is the thing that they need everyone just has like something, some kind of connection to this guy that they need to hold on to. I genuinely wonder if there's like a thing like that with Christians, or like with Muslims or whatever. But this is how it is. That a Yid, no matter where he goes, or he can't accept that the connection can be entirely severed. There always needs to be something. Even if it's the Yidden that are frying out and they're joining communities of ex-Yidden and whatever, but they have the Kehillah, they have the minyan, and Kolvei Asar Shkin Shaya, 10 Yidden, whether they're from or not, in a room means that the Shekhinah is there. So it's a fascinating phenomenon. But a Yid can't be separate from Hashem. Even if they're going to kill him, he won't serve the Zara. There's some fascinating chakiras in the Achreinim that also has some very nice pshatim in Rambam, where they ask how it's possible to be over theoretically for serving away the Zara. Whatever, I can't get into it right now. We're already a little bit over time, so let's just finish. But it's very, very good shot. You can't be separate from the oneness and unity of Hashem. If a person would know that by doing an Aveira he gets separated from godliness, he would not do it in any context. Even if the Nefesh of Bahamas is Mama's pulling him and he would plant his feet in the ground, there would be no way he would let himself be pulled. If he would have knowledge of the fact that he would become separated from the Eibishter by doing the Aveira. Ella, Shayitzar, Masisei. The Nefesh of Bahamas, as I said, the Yetzer Hara tries to convince him this isn't the Nefesh of Bahamas. This is a plot. This is a trick. This is something that the Yetzer Hara needs to put in. The Yetzer Hara says you're not going to be separate from Getlachkeit. The Nefesh of Bahamas isn't interested in Getlachkeit or not Getlachkeit. The Nefesh of Bahamas just wants to eat what it wants to eat. The Yetzer Hara needs to convince the person that the person won't be separated from Getlachkeit, because if the person knows, he won't do it. And it'll be like any Jew that's trusted with Hashem. That the Yetzer Hara tries to reassure him, as it says in the pasuk, that he'll bless himself in his heart, saying that peace will be to me, even if I go in, or because I go in the way of my heart. And even if a person goes in the way of his heart, Shalom Yilai, that it's going to be peaceful for him. And through this, a person stumbles in many things. And this line, Mispark Lavi Lamer, is going to be a line that we're going to be seeing a lot. It's a very fundamental line. And to give the kitzur, an extra Bahamas, so there are some people that have a weak nefesh Bahamas by nature. And there are some people that have a very strong nefesh Bahamas that is always chasing things. It tries to get everything that it can. And even physical pleasures many times makes a person grub. I wonder why I say many times. Maybe he's coming to say that Einik Shabbos doesn't make a person grub. I don't know why exactly. But he says that many times it makes a person grub, so that he doesn't have fear of Hashem, opposite his eyes. And the Yetzer Hara tries to convince him that even with Taivas Isser, a person is like a regular Jew. Even if a person indulges in forbidden things.
So what do you hold?